I get a phone call from Jade, and I answered it, and I was like, hello? Just normal. And she immediately starts saying, what did you do? What did you put in my drink? Then I heard her say, Blaise, you're scaring me. And he was like, you're scaring me. And she was like, I know you put something in my drink. She was like, I knew my drink tasted funny. And she was asking him to empty his pockets. And she was like, let me see what's in your pockets. Let me see. And he was like, I don't have anything. So this whole time I'm like, Jade, like trying to get a response from her.
She couldn't feel her legs. That's what Jade Benning told a friend on the phone, minutes before she went silent. I know you put something in my drink, she said. Then nothing. Across the room, her boyfriend, a former NFL scout, was dialing 911. Not to report a poisoning, to report an allergic reaction. No hives, no swelling. Just a woman who wouldn't respond, and a story that didn't match what paramedics found when they arrived. 5 months pregnant, 24 years old, days from finishing her daughter's nursery. Within 9 days, both Jade and her unborn child would be dead. Jade, on her own 25th birthday. It took investigators a full year to make an arrest. By then, he was living in another state. What was really in that drink would take a Nashville jury 3 years, 9 days of testimony, and 3 hours to decide. The case drew national attention for several reasons. Taylor's public profile as a former college football standout and NFL scout, the length of time between Benning's death and his arrest, and the specific allegation at the center of the prosecution's case, that Taylor secretly dissolved cocaine into alcohol and mixed it into Benning's pink lemonade during a quiet night in at her apartment. Then called 911 and described her symptoms as an allergic reaction rather than what paramedics would ultimately treat as a drug toxicity emergency.
I don't know, we got cookies and pasta. I don't know what she's done, if she's done anything today or anything, but everything was fine, and then I don't know what's happening. She got out of mouth and she's shaking.
Jade Tristan Benning was born on March 6, 1998, in Little Rock, Arkansas. She graduated from Little Rock Central High School in 2016. In 2020, she completed a culinary degree at Brightwater Culinary Arts. She moved to Nashville and built a career in food service, working as a head pastry chef at Mirabelle's Table, cooking at Ernest Bar and Hideaway, and running her own catering business, JTB Eatery. Friends who testified at trial described her as someone actively building a life around food, family, and, eventually, motherhood. Benning maintained close ties to her home state throughout her time in Nashville. A childhood friend from Arkansas testified that her daughter and Benning had been best friends since they were 4 years old, meeting in a dance class, and that the friendship between the two girls had brought their mothers together as close friends as well. A bond that lasted into adulthood and led that friend to drive from Arkansas to Nashville as soon as she learned Benning had been hospitalized. By early 2023, Benning was approximately 5 months pregnant. She had told friends and family she intended to name her daughter Ivy Blair. Co-workers testified she was preparing her apartment for the baby's arrival and described her outlook toward motherhood as positive and forward-looking, in the weeks before her death. Blaise Taylor was born and raised in Waco, Texas. He is the son of Trooper Taylor, currently the Associate Offensive Head Coach at Texas A, and M. Taylor played cornerback and return specialist at Arkansas State University from approximately 2014 to 2018, where he set school and Sunbelt Conference records for single-game punt returns and return yardage, and was recognized as a National Football Foundation National Scholar Athlete, an honor tied to combined academic and athletic achievement. After his playing career ended, he worked as a senior defensive analyst at Utah State University and later spent 4 years as a scout for the Tennessee Titans, a role that put him in professional football circles, even as the investigation into Benning's death was getting underway. According to testimony presented at trial, Taylor and Benning met on the dating app Hinge in January 2022. They did not speak again until August 2022, when they met for dinner and began a relationship, though it was not exclusive. At the end of September 2022, Benning suspected she was pregnant. On November 4th, 2022, she told Taylor the child was his. Testimony indicated Benning wanted to keep the child, while Taylor did not. She told him she would raise the child on her own, and that he did not have to be involved. By the time this conversation took place, testimony indicated abortion was no longer an option, given how far along the pregnancy was. Taylor reportedly told his own parents around this time that he had met a woman and might be having a child. On December 31st, 2022, Taylor contacted Benning again. The following day, January 1st, 2023, the two met at a park and talked for hours. According to testimony, they agreed to get to know each other again so they could co-parent if the child was confirmed to be his. Text messages introduced at trial showed the relationship fluctuating in the weeks that followed. In one message read to the jury, Benning wrote to Taylor, "You said how you felt and stated that moving forward you want no parts, so I will let it be just that. I will not involve you at any point. I will love this child unconditionally with or without you." The two later reconciled. Prosecutors introduced testimony from two of Taylor's previous girlfriends to argue that his response to Benning's pregnancy fit a pattern. The first was a woman who testified she began dating Taylor in 2016, when she was 18 years old, during his college years. Their relationship was described as on and off for roughly 2 years. She became pregnant in January 2017, testified she felt scared and unprepared, and ultimately chose to have an abortion. She testified Taylor accompanied her to both appointments. The second witness was Apple Denny, who testified she dated Taylor on and off starting in 2017. Denny told the jury that during that period, Taylor informed her a different woman he had been involved with, sometimes referred to in testimony as Winford, had become pregnant and that he did not want the child. According to Denny's testimony, Taylor searched online for ways to induce an abortion and asked Denny to obtain abortion pills on his behalf, telling her he could make her take them or put it in her drink. Denny testified she did not obtain anything for him. She said she instead scheduled an abortion appointment herself, posing as the other woman, and later learned that pregnancy ended in an abortion. Prosecutors used this testimony to argue Taylor had, on a prior occasion, discussed covertly ending a pregnancy by drugging a woman without her knowledge, the same method they alleged he used against Benning. On the evening of February 25th, 2023, Taylor visited Benning at her Nashville apartment for what was described in testimony as an at-home cook and paint date night. Sometime that evening, Benning's condition deteriorated severely. Taylor called 911. On the 911 call, later played for the jury, Taylor told dispatchers he believed Benning was having a severe allergic reaction to food. When the dispatcher asked whether she was showing typical signs of a severe allergic reaction, swelling, rash, hives, or redness, Taylor said she was not, but reported that Benning was unresponsive and appeared to be vomiting. Benning was taken to Vanderbilt University Medical Center. Her condition was critical from the time of her arrival. A friend testified that a cup seen in earlier photographs of the apartment, positioned in front of Benning, was later found missing from the apartment by the time police executed a search warrant. Testimony prosecutors used to argue that some cleanup of the scene had occurred before officers arrived, suggesting the act was not a spontaneous, panicked event. A close friend of Benning's, Nijaiha Jackson, testified that she received a phone call from Benning that night, during which Benning told her she had been drugged. Jackson testified she could hear Benning yelling at Taylor during the call. According to Jackson's account, Benning said, "I know you put something in my drink because I can't even walk straight." Benning reportedly told Jackson she could not feel her legs. Jackson also testified Benning said to Taylor, in reference to the pregnancy, "You did this so something would happen to the baby." Benning's unborn daughter, Ivy, died on February 27, 2023, 2 days after the alleged poisoning. Benning herself did not recover. Prosecutors described her as having lingered and languished in the days that followed before she was taken off life support and died on March 6, 2023, her 25th birthday. The Davidson County Medical Examiner, Dr. Erin Carney, testified that toxicology results showed Benning had a high concentration of cocaine in her system at the time of her death, an amount she testified was more than could reasonably be accounted for by casual recreational use. Dr. Carney testified she found no physical evidence indicating Benning was a chronic or habitual cocaine user, such as nasal tissue damage, needle marks, or other signs associated with long-term drug abuse. If you watch up to this moment, please subscribe and turn on notifications to stay informed on the latest cases and investigations. On cross-examination, the defense highlighted that Dr. Carney had not specifically tested the earliest blood sample drawn from Benning for fentanyl. Dr. Carney responded that she considered fentanyl testing unnecessary because an initial urine screen had already come back negative for the drug. She testified she could not determine the exact method by which the cocaine entered Benning's system, but maintained her opinion on cause of death was based on the full autopsy, the toxicology results, and Benning's overall medical presentation.
When Blaise Taylor comes back into Jade Benning's life, this is the evidence that you heard was not he came back welcoming this opportunity with open arms. He tells her very specifically in these messages that your life is changing. This is going to be a thing for you. At no point does he say we, me, ours. This is going to change Jade's life. And he is not portraying it as a positive, telling her she shouldn't be so optimistic. And Jade Benning, just as her friends described her, always optimistic, still said, okay, but I'm going to be able to make this work. Blaise Taylor did not go to any of her pregnancy appointments with her OBGYN. Not one. She asked him very specifically, sending him the calendar event. And specifically saying, I really hope you can make it. I would love for you to be there when I found out the gender of our baby. If it's going to be a boy or a girl, I want you to be there. And he did not go. And even when they saw the shadow and she had to have follow-up testing and then another follow-up appointment, he didn't go to any of those. Jade's stepmom, Andrea, she went with her the day that she found out she was having a baby girl. And Jade was still so happy even though he wasn't there. You also have proof about why Jade wasn't posting, about why everybody didn't know that it was his baby. He was the father. You have a message where Jade is saying, I talked to my mom and let it be known not to bring up you or my situation to anyone. She is defending him and his request that no one know that he's the father of the baby. He responds, but it's all good as long as we are on the same page moving forward. Everything is cool, but I appreciate it. The day before Jade Benning is murdered, the day before, the night before she is murdered, Jade Benning wanted to see Blaise Taylor that night, and he didn't. He is texting Xavier Winford, who he's had some kind of relationship with since 2017. He's texting her and saying, you should never doubt anything when it comes to us. And she says, I'm doing my best. And he says, I know, I'm trying to reassure you. She thanks him. He says, I'll do anything to help you. That's what I'm here for. She says, I trust that's true. And he says, good. Do you trust in us? She responds, yes. Good. Then you have nothing to worry about. Everything is going to work out. She says he's glad. He says, me too. I love you. And I need you to love me back. And be in love with me. She responds that she loves him, and he says, good, I just want us to be happy together. We are going to be just fine. We just need to stick together. And she promises him that they are going to stick together. The next night, he goes over to Jade Benning's house for date night. The date night that she's planned. She has canvases so that they can paint pictures for the baby's room. He goes over there to the date night with cocaine to put in her drink. He goes to the date night. The testimony that you heard from Nijaiha Jackson and from Keontae Jones about them stopping by, that whole time that he's shuffling those Uno cards, he has the cocaine to put in her drink. He gets there at 7 p.m. They show up at 7:30 for 30 minutes talking about spades and having random conversation, and he has it. He does not call 911 until 9:29:27. I'm sorry. The call that Jade makes is at 9:29:27. EMTs don't get to her until 9:50. Dr. Carney's testimony is that Jade was given the cocaine that she ingested orally 30 minutes before. You have this photograph from 8/29 that shows the progress. She has not been given anything at that point. The next image that you have is at 9:10 p.m. It is somewhere between this point and the next image of their progress that she has to have been given the cocaine in her drink. (9:24 p.m. is the next time that there is an event. It is after that 30-minute mark. She has finished the painting. You heard Dr. Carney's testimony about how the symptoms would start off not severe, but it would escalate really quickly. And 9:24 to 9:28, you have 4 minutes. 4 minutes after he has put this in her drink. He is there and knows what he has done. And for 4 minutes, takes picture after picture with Jade Benning. Blaise Taylor went there with a plan. There was a plan. He has already poisoned her, and he is taking pictures with her. Blaise Taylor did not plan for Jade Benning calling Nijaiha Jackson. That hadn't happened yet. The last event that happens is that deleted picture, and within 45 seconds, Jade is calling her best friend. What did you do? She is calling her best friend scared, and she is not talking to Nijaiha. She is talking to Blaise Taylor. 6 minutes and 9 seconds. He is there. Jade is telling him, I can't feel my legs. I can't walk straight. He is there, and he is not saying anything to her. Like, Jade, what is wrong? What's going on? Let me help you. Come on, sit down. What is happening? You seemed fine just a second ago. What can I get you? Do you want me to call someone?
At a separate stage of proceedings, the medical examiner's office indicated Benning had more drugs in her system than could be accounted for through ordinary recreational use. Detective Adam Reese of the Metro Nashville Police Department led the investigation. Following Benning's death, Reese testified that investigators found no evidence Benning had been trying to harm herself or her unborn child. Reese also testified about the missing cup from the crime scene and about the decision not to seek a search warrant for the apartment immediately, an issue the defense used to raise questions about whether the scene had been properly preserved. The defense pressed Reese on Benning's history of recreational drug use and separately raised allegations of evidence tampering, while prosecutors used their questioning of Reese to focus on Taylor's prior relationships and the pattern they intended to establish through later witnesses. Taylor was not arrested immediately. In the time between Benning's death and his arrest, he moved to Logan, Utah, where he had previously worked as a senior defensive analyst at Utah State University. Metro Nashville Police arrested Taylor in March 2024, roughly a year after Benning's death, stating the arrest followed months of investigation. A press release from the department at the time said detectives believed Taylor had poisoned Benning without her knowledge on February 25, 2023, and noted that he had relocated to Utah after the deaths. Taylor's bond was set at $2,500,000. He was released in April 2024 and required to wear a GPS monitor while awaiting trial, a period that stretched well over 2 years before the case reached a jury. Taylor was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of felony murder in connection with the deaths of Jade Benning and her unborn daughter. He pleaded not guilty to all counts. The Davidson County District Attorney's Office pursued a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. Taylor's trial opened in Nashville on June 22, 2026, in Davidson County Criminal Court, and ran roughly 9 days, including jury selection, extending into a rare Saturday session to accommodate the volume of testimony. Opening statements focused heavily on the nature of Taylor and Benning's relationship, with prosecution and defense presenting sharply different narratives of what happened on February 25, 2023, and of Taylor's state of mind in the months before. Assistant District Attorney Jan Norman told jurors that Benning and Taylor had been casually dating when Benning discovered she was pregnant, and that Taylor did not want to become a father. Defense attorney Letitia Quinones Hollins countered that Taylor was not ready to be a father, but argued this did not make him a killer, telling jurors the case boiled down to an accidental overdose rather than a homicide. The defense's central theory throughout the trial was that Benning's death resulted from an accidental drug overdose, not a deliberate poisoning, and suggested Benning had a history of recreational drug use that better explained the toxicology findings. Over the following days, the two sides built competing accounts of the same set of facts, the same 911 call, the same apartment, the same toxicology report, arguing over what they meant. Reporting from inside the courtroom captured the shape of the trial as it unfolded day by day. On the third day of testimony, jurors heard from Benning's Nashville friend about the cook and paint date night, as well as emotional testimony from Stephanie Franklin, the Arkansas friend who described arriving at the hospital to find Benning connected to tubes and machines in the ICU. The fourth day centered on cell phone data extracted from Benning's phone, including the text message in which she told a friend she planned to inform Taylor she intended to keep the pregnancy. The fifth day, held on a Saturday to keep the trial moving, brought testimony from Detective Reese and from Apple Denny, the former girlfriend who testified about the earlier abortion pill discussion. The medical examiner, Dr. Erin Carney, also testified around this point in the trial, walking jurors through the autopsy and toxicology findings and fielding cross-examination on the fentanyl testing question. Later days brought testimony from Benning's mother, Bridget Burks, and from Taylor's former Titans co-worker, Mikal Johnson, before the defense opened its own case with expert witnesses challenging the medical examiner's conclusions. The eighth day brought closing arguments and, ultimately, the verdict. Over the course of the trial, jurors heard from multiple people close to Benning. A friend from Nashville testified about the cook and paint date night and about seeing Benning shortly before she was hospitalized. A childhood friend from Arkansas, Stephanie Franklin, whose daughter had been best friends with Benning since they were 4 years old in dance class, testified about arriving at the hospital and seeing Benning in the ICU connected to tubes and machines. A co-worker of Benning's, Lauren Weber, testified about Benning's state of mind in the weeks before her death, saying Benning was preparing her apartment and was looking forward to becoming a mother. Benning's mother, Bridget Burks, testified about conversations she had with her daughter regarding Taylor's reaction to the pregnancy. Burks told the jury, "If she had the baby, he wanted nothing to do with the baby. He didn't want it to have his name. He didn't want the child to ever know who he was." A former co-worker of Taylor's at the Titans, Mikal Johnson, corroborated this general account, testifying that Taylor had told him around the time of the pregnancy that he was not ready yet and not anytime soon to become a father. Cell phone data extracted from Benning's phone was also read into the record. Investigators presented texts Benning sent to a close friend, including one in which she wrote she intended to tell Taylor she was keeping the pregnancy. "I'm going to tell him today that I'm not having the abortion, so he can just get it out of his head." The defense argued Benning had a documented history of recreational drug and alcohol use during the relationship and, according to the defense's account, during the pregnancy itself, specifically referencing marijuana, mushrooms, Adderall, and alcohol. Quinones Hollins argued in court that there was only one person involved with drugs, and it wasn't Blaise. The defense also called an expert witness, a doctor, who challenged the medical examiner's conclusion that Benning's cause of death was acute cocaine toxicity, testifying that her symptoms were, in the witness's opinion, more consistent with fentanyl exposure. On cross-examination, prosecutors noted that this witness was not a forensic pathologist or a toxicologist and was not trained to formally assess another laboratory's testing procedures. The defense also argued the amount of cocaine found in Benning's system was implausibly large for Taylor to have covertly administered without her noticing, given the time frame involved. Quinones Hollins pointed to a roughly 3-hour window on the night in question, arguing there was insufficient time for Taylor to have formed and executed a premeditated plan. He has 3 hours to cook up the elaborate plan to kill her. Taylor did not testify, Only the court confirmed on the record that he understood his right to take the stand and chose not to exercise it. Closing arguments took place on July 1st, 2026, the 8th day of trial. Assistant District Attorney Jan Norman argued Taylor had both motive and opportunity, telling jurors, "He goes over there to the date night with cocaine to put in her drink." Norman referenced Apple Denny's earlier testimony regarding the prior pregnancy involving another woman. Her testimony was she had to talk him out of putting something in another girl's drink, who was refusing to have an abortion, so that he could cause the abortion without her knowing. The defense maintained its position that Benning's death was the result of an accidental overdose and reiterated doubts about the state's timeline and the handling of physical evidence at the apartment. The jury began deliberating following closing arguments on July 1st, 2026, and returned a verdict after approximately 3 hours, according to court reporting. The jury found Taylor guilty on all 4 counts he faced, though on a reduced charge for one of them: guilty of second-degree murder in the death of Jade Benning, a reduction from the original first-degree murder charge; guilty of first-degree premeditated murder in the death of Benning's unborn daughter, Ivy; guilty on 2 counts of felony murder. Sobs were reported from both sides of the courtroom when the verdict was read. Each juror individually affirmed the verdict to the judge when polled. Following the guilty verdict, the same jury proceeded to a sentencing phase to determine whether Taylor would serve life in prison with the possibility of parole, or life without parole. Jurors spent over an hour deliberating this question. They ultimately recommended a sentence of life in prison with the possibility of parole. Under Tennessee sentencing guidelines for this outcome, Taylor is eligible for parole consideration with good behavior in approximately 51 years. A formal sentencing hearing was set for September 9th, 2026. After the verdict, the court heard impact statements from Benning's family. Her aunt, Brandy Moran, described the effect of the loss on Benning's mother. "It's destroyed her. When she talked about Jade Benning being her life, she was her life. They talked every day, and aside from the fear and the hurt I know she has, I live with the fear of, is she going to get past this?" Benning's mother, Bridget Burks, told the court, "It's just a void that will always be there." Asked whether her day-to-day life was different without her daughter, Burks said, "Most of the time people ask, 'Are you okay?' I say, 'Yes,' but behind closed doors, I'm not." Benning's father, Dennis Browning, spoke to reporters after the verdict was read, saying he was definitely glad everything is over and justice is served. Taylor's mother, Dr. Evelyn Taylor, did not address the verdict directly in her statement to the court, but spoke about her son's character growing up, saying other parents had expressed respect for him. Following the conviction, Taylor's defense team released a statement maintaining his innocence and indicating an intent to appeal. While we respect the jury system and the process, we must also respectfully disagree with today's verdict and plan to appeal the decision because Blaise did not do this. He maintains that he is innocent, and we will continue working to prove that. We understand and respect the pain that Ms. Benning's family and friends feel over her tragic death and the death of her unborn baby, but putting an innocent man behind bars is also a tragedy. As of this account, Taylor has been convicted on all 4 counts, and a life sentence with the possibility of parole has been recommended by the jury, with formal sentencing scheduled for September 9th, 2026. Under the sentencing structure jurors selected, Taylor would become eligible for parole consideration, contingent on good behavior in approximately 51 years, a timeframe that, as a practical matter, extends well beyond an ordinary life expectancy from the point of conviction. His legal team has stated its intention to appeal the verdict, meaning the case is not yet fully closed, even after the trial's conclusion. The case remains active pending that formal sentencing and any subsequent appellate proceedings. Several factors combined to push this case beyond local Nashville news coverage and international true crime reporting. Taylor's football background, a record-setting college career at Arkansas State, an NFF National Scholar Athlete honor, and 4 years as an NFL scout for the Tennessee Titans, gave the case a degree of public profile that an ordinary homicide investigation would not have had. His father's position as a Division I assistant coach added a second layer of public familiarity to the family name. The specific mechanism alleged by prosecutors also set the case apart. Rather than an act of direct violence, the state's theory rested on a covert act, dissolving cocaine into alcohol and introducing it into a drink during what was, on its surface, an ordinary night in, followed immediately by a 911 call in which Taylor offered an alternative medical explanation, an allergic reaction for what paramedics and hospital staff would ultimately treat as a suspected overdose. The gap between the account given to first responders and the account prosecutors say the evidence supported became a central thread of the trial itself. Finally, the extended timeline. Benning's death in March 2023. Taylor's arrest a full year later in March 2024, and a trial that did not begin until June 2026, more than 3 years after Benning died, meant the case remained an open, unresolved story in the public record for an unusually long stretch, with periodic developments, the arrest, the bond hearing, pre-trial motions, keeping it in the news well before testimony ever began. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more cases like this.